Hello and welcome back to part 3 of our final painting segment. Today we're going to paint the front side of the engine cover, the fan shroud, and some miscellaneous parts. You can see I've got the back side of the engine cover masked up. I'm using some various masking tapes to do this. What I'm doing here is I'm using a flexible, it's a 1/4 inch blue tape. This is a tape that you can peel on a painted line and you won't have any problems lifting the paint. So what I intend to do is paint the front side and have it wrap around this entire edge so that we can seal it properly and then make a transition right in that seam. But we'll take you through that step by step, see how that works, and also take a quick look at see how our car is drying up. So far looking good. I don't see anything in there I really have any concerns with. It's tightening up real nice, and starting to get a little bit of an orange peel going, but not bad. Not bad at all. I think this is going to polish out real nice. Everything looks nice and straight. And the dashboard really set up nice. It took about a full week for that thing to really settle in and stop moving around. It had a little bit of a seedy look going when we first did it, but it worked itself out. That's usually how these solvent-based products work. They just take a little bit of time. Door jambs drying up nice. I'm going to restore this badge here. Put some black back in there. Get that looking brand new again if we can. And then our dashboard, you can see our paint looks very cool with our gray finish on top, making our transition to our satin. Very factory looking. So, looking good so far. Front fascia drying up nice. Our VIN tag. Overall, very happy with the way this turned out. Really happy. Okay, well there she is. I'm going to roll this car out of here and get these guys set up. Booth temperature is not quite up where we want it yet, but we'll get all this staged and get some paint going. Okay, just laid down my last coat, so it's wet right now. I'm probably 2-3 minutes after it flowing out, and so everything looks like it's laying down really tight, super glossy, and I don't see anything in there at all. There are just a couple of minor specks of dust, but really glossing up. One of the tricks to get it to gloss up is laying it down at the correct timing intervals when it's flashing. For me, in this temperature range, that correct timing is not 15 minutes, so they recommend 10 to 15 minutes for flash time between coats, and that's whatever reducer you're using in your temperature range. So what I'm doing on clear coat, I'm waiting longer than 10 minutes. I'm right at about 12 minutes, right on target. I'm touching an area, an offset area here, just to make sure we're not still wet, and then if it's tacky, it's ready to go. So what happens if you go too soon? Then you can get a little bit of a dulling effect. You can also get something that's called blushing. You can also get that if your strokes are too wet, so you got too much coming out of the gun. Looks kind of milky as you're making a pass. They call that blushing. And with this product, I've had some blushing before in areas, and it works itself out. However, I have used some other materials where it doesn't work itself out. If it blushes, which is basically a foaming, if you put it under a microscope, it'd look like foaming. And sometimes it won't work itself out. It'll be in there. So yeah, that could be a real problem. So try not to put too much material down. I'm just putting down just the right amount, not trying to overdo it. And that seems to work best. 12 minutes on my timing, so give it your best gloss and flow out. Let's just say, for example, you waited longer than the 15-minute window. Let's say it's like over flashed. Depending on your temperature range you're working in, then you're kind of going into no man's land, depending on whatever products you're using. and temperature, it just, anything could happen. It's really just best to just sit with the piece and babysit it and get it through the correct intervals. Let's take a look at our gas door. So what I'm doing with this to stage it is I got it propped up, and I'm treating the edges, even though they're really small edges on this, I'm treating this, I'm shooting the edge just as if this was a big panel. And that way I get a really good finished edge on there. And you'll notice I'm doing the top side on this one last as opposed to the engine cover. And the reason I'm doing that is because of the type of edge that it is. It doesn't roll under. It finishes off 90 degrees. So you got to do the finish side second. Let's take a quick look and see how much product we use so far. So here's my mixing bucket. It's a 2-gallon bucket, about halfway. It's like we've used about 1 gallon so far. What I do when I draw from this, I stir it up real good every time. Make sure it's really stirred up good, and then scoop some out of there, put it in a cup, always straining, strain and strain again. And let's take a look at our gloss up here. Okay, so you can take a look down in there. You can see maybe half a quart left, so we're pretty close. We did good on that. Got through all these big panels so far, only used up about 1 gallon. So coverage is working real good for that amount. So part of my strategy also is when I do the doors, I'm going to do the front side first and the back side last. That way, if I'm getting close on my material, if things are getting skinny, and let's just say I ran out and I had to have something else mixed up, I wouldn't want to take the chance that it could be slightly off, even though we have Tomas on our side. Usually, as no two things in the universe are the same. So dye lot to dye lot, color matching, it could always be just a micron off. And to make sure that we don't have any problem matching there, do the inside of my doors last. We should be alright, but it's something I pull into my strategy. Okay guys, that's it for this part. Let's move on to the other smaller engine parts and hinges. So there's our fan shroud, still wet. This particular item, I've got a lot of time trying to restore. This is the original shroud on the car. Really dried out, a couple of little micro cracks in there. And you can fix those with super glue. That'll hold really good, and then you can go in there and sand it up afterwards. So what I did to restore this, I sanded it up really good. Gotta wear gloves on that for sure because of the fiberglass. And then re-resined it, and then sanded the resin, then POR 15 both sides, and then sanded that. That POR 15, believe it or not, is even harder than our urethane finish, even though it's a single component. But it lays down a real nice smooth foundation that you can wet sand up and then paint on top of it. So on top of that then, I have my black Deltron 2000, 2 coats of that, 3 coats of that, and also 3 wet coats of our urethane. That'll look real good with our Weber sitting on there. Okay, let's move on to some more parts. Back in the paint booth here this morning, so we're getting ready to spray some smaller parts on the car. The reason I'm doing these now is while I've got everything set up and I'm spraying urethanes, trying to use up all my last of my 1st gallon mix and catalyst, and that'll be a good transition point so I don't have to throw anything away. I can use it down to its smallest drop. So what I'm going to do here today, not everything in painting requires overkill products. There are valve covers for the engine and timing chain covers. And so what I'm going to do with these are going to be exposed to high temperatures. So what I'm using a shelf item. This is made by VHT, and it's a cast aluminum color. The reason I'm using this as opposed to just an ordinary base paint is that it is a high temperature paint, so when it sticks to the surface, this is going to be our base color, it won't blister off when it heats up. Had real good luck with this stuff before. The problem with it straight up is it doesn't really have a hard enough surface to really show and shine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on there, let it dry up, and then I'm going to top coat it with some thinned down urethane. The reason we have to thin it down, you can take a close-up look here, get my camera to focus. These items were sandblasted a few months ago. There's a texture to it, and also there's some real small pores in there. And those pores, what would happen if I put down a real thick coat of urethane on there, have what's called solvent pop, or I like to call it gassing out. So what happens is the urethane will skin over that pore before the gases have a chance to fully escape. All the solvents evaporate, and then you can get little blisters on there. So in the case of these valve covers, we do have to thin it, and that should help that out. Take a look and see how these turn out after we spray them. And then also I'm spraying the hinges this morning. Don't really like hanging things if I can help it, but there are some things you have to hang. There's just no way around it. So many angles and surface area, it just has to be done in a hanging position. And so also taking advantage of gravity here, I'm having it drain off in a direction where, so as I'm hanging it, as gravity takes over, if it has any sags or drips in it, it'll be towards the bottom of the piece where you won't actually see any of it. So I'm going to do those first, and what I'm doing is I'm shooting them over here by the exit, and then I'll rotate them out to our stand back here, get them out of the blast area. And then also I'm going to shoot the steering cover this morning with a clear coat, and our cal drain. This was something I did a few months ago. I re-resined it and sanded it up. It was pretty dried out, and now it's nice and sturdy again. A little bit grungy in color, but it is authentic. I'll go ahead and shoot it up with some urethane and see if we can bring some life back into it, and maybe we'll be able to use it. We can replace these though if it just looks bad. I'll give it a shot. Authenticity is important too. So okay, let's get these going with some base coat. I'll cover up these items in the rear and see what they look like. Okay, it's been about a half hour since spraying my last coat on these hinges. Put 3 coats total on here and sprayed all these in 70 degrees, right at 70 degrees. I put my base coat down at about 68 degrees, and actually for doing base coats I prefer a little bit cooler temperature. It's so black you can't hardly see it. A little bit cooler temperature on my base colors. It seems to smooth them out a little bit more and end up with less problems. A little bit cooler temperature on that. And then I like to spray my urethane right at 70 if I can get it. So these look like they're going to turn out pretty nice. Originally these were sandblasted, then epoxied, and then recently I just wet sanded the epoxy 400, followed it up with some scuff, resealed them, and then shot some black Deltron 2000 series base coat on them. These are going to drive really nice. They look real sharp, holding that hood up. And then these other guys here, I put 2 coats on our steering cover because when that shrinks down, I want to see the texture. This has like a special texture to it. I want to make sure that we retain that when that glosses up. And this will also hold up a little bit better. When we start throwing a carpet over it, it won't wear down so quickly. These things look pretty grubby after 50 years. And then our jack stand base, I'll do one side today, and then tomorrow I'll do the other side. Yeah, this guy bounced back. It's looking a lot better. Definitely shines up. Put it in there, see how she looks. Maybe we can use it. Let's go look at our other hinges. Our engine cover hinges. Nice and glossy. So no problems with any runs. No sags. And adding that little bit of reducer in there just really helped with all that. Take some of the weight out of it. But still putting 3 coats on. These are really dry up nice. Let's take a look and see how much reducer I actually put in there. So this is how much mix I'm using this morning. 4 to 1 would normally be where we would be at, where that arrow is. That would be our regular mix. I add maybe about 10% more reducer so we can keep our good solid content, but that will help flow it out a little bit better. Okay, I'm going to move these guys out of the booth so we don't get any contamination from our silver, and then we're going to do our valve covers. Alright, valve cover's looking pretty good here. So I emptied the entire can, these few pieces here. First coat was just like a dusting. Get kind of a tack, a little bit of a traction on there. And then the remainder of the coats were fairly wet. And that's going to help out filling in our pores. You can see our pores now are filling in, although we're remaining with our texture, which is what we want, but we don't have those holes in there, which could be a problem. So these have been dry, maybe about 10 minutes. I'll give them another 10 minutes, and then we'll shoot that clear on there, see what it looks like. So temperature in the booth now is starting to come up. We're at right at about 72. So don't want to get past 75 on that, or could end up with some problems. I talk about temperature a lot. It's one of those things where, let's say you have a chef who's cooking a meal, and he relies on just the right temperature to cook something to perfection, whatever he's trying to do there. A little too hot or not quite hot enough, he's not going to get it. So he's really playing with that temperature all the time he's working his meal. And it's kind of the same thing with painting. That temperature is so important. It's as important as mixing ratios, especially for urethanes. Get into hotter temperatures, and yeah, you get dry sprays, you get all kinds of problems with things. It just doesn't lay down properly, doesn't have enough time to flow out and level out. One other thing I did on these guys to prep them this morning, they were sandblasted. I used some acetone rather than trying to wipe them down. What I do is I fill this cup with some acetone, and then I use a good quality nylon brush, and I just rinse them down really good with the acetone. It evaporates quickly and prepares the surface perfectly without any dust on there. Okay, drying up nice, color looks good. Let's get some clear coat going, see what they look like. Okay, it's been about 3.5 hours since our last coat. I put 3 full wet coats on these and allowed about 15 minutes between each coat, making sure that they've dried up enough to close off any pores so we don't have any solvent pop problems. Although we're spraying in a cooler temperature, so it should help to eliminate that. If we were doing these in hot weather, that could be a real problem on this type of a casting. But so far, looking good. I think these are going to turn out fine. In a week from now, these are going to look even better. They tighten up and everything evaporates out of there. We'll get our texture and grain back. These will look really, really authentic with a nice protective coating on there. Nice little dress-up kit for our engine. Okay guys, there's some engine parts for you. I'll get some more panels uploaded as I get them complete. This is pretty much going to be it for this small parts segment, although we do have some more small parts down the road. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.